Hey, gang, what is going on? It has been a minute. It has been a minute. And boy, have I had a 10-day period or so. Hey, what's up, Ukulele? What's up, Zero Fox? What's going on, guys? I have had a time, let me tell you. This is like it's both the best and the worst part about being a lawyer is that like sometimes like I had a very interesting 10 days. Incredible legal work, some of the stuff I'm most proud of in my career. Did some great stuff. Really pleased with how it turned out. I think we have an excellent chance down the road, but man, oh man, oh man, when you suddenly have to get something done, boy, boy, have there been some long nights, some sleepless nights recently. Have there been some early mornings and some intense days. So I apologize, gang. I know I have not been hanging out with you the way that I would like to. That's unfortunate, but I'm going to try to get back to the regular schedule to the extent that I can. It's been a real busy stretch. This happened last year, by the way, if you remember in April when I was on trial and I was just gone, just gone. Now at that point, I didn't really have an audience, so you probably didn't notice, but I was just gone. Pisco got mad at me. He was saying like it was my duty to continue commentating when I was too busy to pay attention to what's happening. But it is what it is. I'm not. I right now still live in the world of the golden handcuffs. So as long as I live in the world of the golden handcuffs, yeah, Zero Fox, you probably remember because Zero Fox was watching me during the couch surfing era, and last April I was in the couch surfing era, and I went dark for like a few weeks because I was on trial. I don't think I can talk about the case. Oh yeah, those golden cuffs for sure, golden cuffs. I don't think I can talk about the case publicly yet. Now, the stuff we did is on file. So it is, if you are truly enterprising, you could actually probably figure out what I was doing because my name's on it. But I don't think I don't think it would be correct for me to publicly comment on it at this time. So I won't. But I just want to say, like, this is kind of like the coolest part about being a lawyer is what just happened. Am I tired? Yes. Have I slept a lot in the last couple days? No. No, not almost not at all, I would say, is how much I slept in the last couple days. But here's the thing about being a lawyer that like when it really to me feels great. Somebody comes in and they have a problem. They have an urgent problem, like a life or death or bankruptcy or government comes after you, jail, financial ruin, lose your company, lose your house, like that kind of problem. They come in, they're like, this is things might go bad for me, right? And you are able to figure out how to fix that. You're like, this is something I can do something about. I can fix this problem. I know what to do. I know how to do it. I'm going to be able to action this and find a way forward for you. The flip side of that is that you just don't, your time stops being your own because if you're working on somebody's emergency, right? Like imagine, if you will, that like one of you got arrested or we're having a true crisis, right? And you hire a lawyer and like the lawyer's like, well, I'd get you out of jail, but it's the weekend. I don't work on the weekends. Like, get the fuck out of here, right? You're going to be working nights. You're going to be working weekends. I had my daughter's birthday. I was working at the birthday party. Like it was a mess. But this is what you do. This is what you do as a lawyer. You put your client's needs before your own. And it was cool. I was happy to be able to do something really interesting and really helpful. So I think it was a good piece of legal work. I'm really proud of it, but man, am I tired. Man, am I tired. How dare you have a day job? You should be able to live and raise your children on our $5 memberships. Yeah, that's that's my bad. That's my bad. No, you guys are very generous. I don't want to. I'm not at all shit talking. I'm not at all shit talking. Um, but I would like to, in the medium term. I don't even think long term. In the medium term, if the channel keeps growing and I can get a little bit of a rhythm going, I think that there might be an opportunity to try to diversify my income streams, right? Where it's like law is some money, streaming some money, debates is some money, speaking engagements, et cetera, et cetera. And then I could balance things a little bit better. Right now, there's no balance to this. Like the truth is, as much as I love you guys and I love hanging out with you, and this is what I really enjoy this. It's still very much a hobby for me. So, there's no question what the priority is, but I could see that changing. With enough channel growth, with enough time, I could see that changing. But right now we're just where we are, and that's okay. I'm happy with it. I'm happy with where we are. I will say I do need to get back into a schedule because I think giving people notice about when I'm going to pop on instead of just like randomly jumping on in the middle of the day, that's, I think, helpful. I think people benefit from having a little bit of extra time. So a little bit of a weird thing, channel news wise, which I'm having a hard time figuring out. And this is not at all shade to anyone or anything. I'm just trying to figure out how YouTube works. And maybe you guys understand, and maybe you can help me figure it out. So here's the channel, right? Now, hey, what's going on, Gelatinous Rube? Good to have you here. This is the thing I don't understand about YouTube, right? So if you look at the live streams, they vary tremendously. You could see some of them get like 1.2K. Birthright Citizenship got like 2,000. That was a lot. But like Conversation with Stelios got like 720, 30. This is kind of where we are. Sometimes, but you can see like the new ones, bigger numbers, the old ones, generally speaking, quite a lot smaller numbers. And the reason is the channel's been growing, right? So like back then, like 716 was like a pretty big number. And now we're getting, the numbers are going up on average. Okay, this makes sense to me. Here's what I don't get. Maybe you guys can explain this to me. This video is popping the fuck off. You can see like the thumbnail, the lawyer reacts, but like 4.3K. And this is me reacting to the oral argument. So this is like mostly the repackaged live stream, because Cacophons, I agree with you, re-uploads take a hit because like the core audience, like you guys who are watching live, I know you're not going to watch the whole thing again. You were here the first time, right? So like I get that. But this one popped the F off, right? And the one with Stelios is like struggling. It's really dying on the vine. And I'm trying to figure out why. Because is it like the law stuff does better than the philosophy stuff? Because this conversation with Stelios, I'm going to tell you, like, just be honest with you, of all the stuff I've done on YouTube, this is maybe the thing I was like the most proud of. Like this conversation, I was so happy with how that went. Like that was, I love this conversation. This filled my heart with joy. Look at the king in his fucking throne. Look at that chair. I need a studio like that. But this was like, it was oral argument. It was fun, but like I was surprised that this is doing that much better. It's topic. Oh, full length SCOTUS reacts are rare and interesting. Okay, so it's the topical oral argument reaction, maybe, because the I've done some oral argument stuff, but it's not always like directly on topic for the thing we're looking at. That's interesting. Okay, so maybe that's the reason why. Well, that's worth thinking about. I Ukulele watches about half the rewatch them. Well, man, you are my loyal soldier. Thank you, buddy. That makes a huge difference. I appreciate you. Oh, really? I couldn't get past the second, maybe third. So was it because it was too I have a lot of conversations that are kind of combative and debatey, right? But like the conversation with Stelios was like much more academic. Like we were both putting on our academic hats, right? And we were like kind of like doing a kind of historical, philosophical conversation. So is that what made it dry? The fact that it wasn't like a debate, it was kind of, we agree on a lot of things, and also it was kind of more academic. That makes sense. Oral argument reviews, like especially birthright citizenship, where I've got a little bit of credibility and a little bit of people know me from that. That makes sense. That makes sense. Hey, Loodle, what's going on? Good to see you guys. Okay, so there's kind of a tone thing. Well, that's interesting, right? Because like the conversation with JT got like more pop. Now, part of that might be, by the way, that like, the algorithm's only going to recommend me so many times. And, this is a small channel. So they don't, like, I don't get a ton of recommendations, but all the recommendations I'm getting are going to kind of like the channel where I have the pop. So that makes sense. Um, okay. Well, this is interesting because like, I don't know, like I was like, sorry, this is going to be a this is going to be a drinking stream for sure because it's been, cheers everybody. It's been a fucking time, let me tell you. It's been a fucking time. Um JT is hate watchable. That's probably true. JT probably just said some shit that pissed people off so much that they were like frothing. They were like fucking typing at their screen, like "fuck you, JT." That's funny. Uh, yeah. See, this is the thing. Like Stelios is that guy. Cheers, by the way. Stelios is exactly what I was looking for, where it's kind of like the somebody who's going to come in and not from like, because the American natural law perspective is inherently linked to God because that's how we were founded and that's what our founders believed. But the European version of classic liberalism and natural law is different in that regard. So I thought that to me that was very, very interesting. But I'm taking the feedback. I think that there's a this comment from Cacophons makes a lot of sense. A layman asking you two questions like an idiot, so you have to bring people up to your level, would be more interesting than watching the outside with basically no base understanding. I think that's really, really good feedback, Cacophons. That's really good feedback because I think that like part of the danger of having people who agree about as many things as me and Stelios do is that we just start like spiraling into our little fucking world where we're like, we're just like so happy to talk about like classic liberal theory and we finally have someone who agrees with us because like, let's be real, like people like me and Stelios who are like real classic liberals who actually hold to that doctrine and are not like the modern mutated bastardized liberal that just, basically has, quite frankly, it's just a progressive that uses a different name. Um, it's so rare for me to have that conversation where I was like over the moon to have it. But I think that I think that there's useful feedback there where like part of my job as a like host of a channel is to make things digestible, to make things approachable, to make things interesting and engaging and sexy. Like that's part of what I'm here to do. So uh, so I mean, I think that's useful feedback for me because it gives me something to focus on and make sure that I'm kind of engaging in the right way with this content. Okay, I appreciate that. That's good feedback. Thank you guys. That's very helpful. That's very helpful. Yeah, Jefferson. I feel bad. I feel like Stelios wanted to talk to me in part just because he spends all his time arguing with Sargon, right? And it's like that's all. That's a very post-liberal crew in the Locust Eaters. So I think he was just very happy to be talking to somebody who has a bit more in common with him, which seems like a good thing. So there was a lot of stuff that happened while I was kind of out of pocket. So I don't know what's on your mind. Like, are there any like takes that I did not give that you wish that I did? I've been trying to like be a little bit more active on X recently, so I could at least keep my toe in the water and figure out what people are talking about. I thought Trump blockading the Straits of Hormuz was like a full on test of whether or not people out there in like the Twitterverse were able to see the chessboard. Because I've been saying, I mean, I feel very vindicated. I've been saying for the longest time, if you look at Venezuela and then you look at Iran, you see a strategy. You see a strategy from Trump about trying to kneecap China long term, right? And the best evidence now of this is what does blockading the strait do? Well, the controlling the strait gives Iran leverage over oil shipments. It gives Iran the ability to continue shipping oil primarily to China and BRICS allies that are on the Petro UN, right? And blockading this now, no one's going to ever like because like very few people are pro conflict right now. They're like most people on the left are just pro anti Trump. Most people on the right are anti war. So almost no one's pro conflict. But if you put that aside for a second and just say like, what is the strategy here? Well, the strait, Iran controls it through irregular troops, sea mines, drones, small boats. It takes a long time to wear that out. You blockade it, you take away their economic leverage, you still have time to destroy their production base. But you take away their economic leverage and you prevent the benefits from flowing to China, which really is the main goal. Because if you can choke off China and get leverage over China, then ultimately you could force a deal with Iran. But if Iran feels like they have support from their allies and that their allies are pleased with their progress in the war, nothing's ever going to happen, right? So like exactly zero fucks. You see China is starting to cut into their oil reserves, blocking the strait and preventing Iran from creating a toll business and creating a one-way pipeline. This is tremendous. This is a tremendous move. It's also going to force the region to start diverting their oil and developing other delivery systems that don't go through the strait. So this is, I think, quite clever. But a lot of people got really mad about it. But it's like, I feel like I feel like a lot of people don't see the chessboard, if that makes sense. Like they just get mad about it. They're like, "Oh, why would you move a bishop? Why would you move a bishop? Bishops are dumb. You shouldn't move a bishop." And it's like, no, you have to actually see the board. You have to actually think about what the geopolitics are and what are the moves and what are the counter moves and who are they aimed at. And that to me seemed like a really strong move that I was happy to see. Jefferson, 2 months. Iran's oil can buy more than their currency now. Yeah. Yeah. The oil is valuable. The oil is super valuable right now. And I think that there's going to be, I think this is going to really we'll see. Fingers crossed. But I think that if we keep this up, it's going to make a real difference. I did not watch the video yet, by the way. I've been meaning to, but like, to be honest with you, man, this I don't even want to tell you how many hours I've worked over the last couple of days. It's been totally insane. It's been totally insane. I've been working around the clock. And then I had family stuff because it was my daughter's birthday, and also it was tax season, so I had to do taxes. So it's been, I have not had almost any free time in like a week. So, whew. But I will check the video out, my friend. And thank you for being a member. Appreciate you. Jace, member for a month. Thanks, buddy. Did you read the leaks of the meeting preceding the war? I was surprised on how Trump just dismissed the possibility of the strait being blocked. Well, I think that I have not read the notes, so let me answer that first. I think the thing that Iran has demonstrated that could be surprising, and I think legitimately surprising, is the extent to which that they developed their asymmetric warfare capacity. Because if you think about like their traditional warfare capacity, their navy, their anti-air, their aircrafts, their production facilities, this has all been cratered. We've destroyed all of it. But Iran invested heavily in asymmetric warfare. So they invested in naval mines, they invested in drones, they invested in cheap drones, they invested in cluster munitions, they invested in terror cells, they invested in small boats that can, come out there and put some kind of explosive device or in other ways interfere with shipping. So I think that they've been developing asymmetric deterrence, and that's what their military has been focused on. And to that extent, they've been quite successful in blocking the strait with that deterrence. Now, that's why the counter blockade is such a necessary move. Hey, what's up, Quispy? Good to see you, buddy. Quips Revenge. Good to see you, man. Yeah, I don't understand why the world is so baffled by open the strait or all close the strait. It's, of course, you demand that they open it. They can't open it. So now you've got to figure out how to open it, but that might take time. So in the meantime, you blockade it because fuck them. Don't let them get the benefit. It's not complicated. Really, China has 100 days of I swear, man, if Trump sets off like an economic crisis in China through this, people are going to write history books about what he did. We'll see. We'll see, man. That's crazy. That's a huge deal. That's a huge, if true, that's a huge deal. Because he could keep this going. He might. The political pressure's high, but he could just keep doing it. Okay, so I'm definitely gonna have to watch that video. Maybe we should watch that video. I might pull that up. All right. Well, should we watch the video? Because I'm now. You guys have got me intrigued. I'm very interested in this. The other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, though, and I'll let you all decide. Let me know in chat what you want to do. Judge Boasberg, one of the classic anti-Trump administration judges, got a writ of mandamus today, which is a really extraordinary remedy. It's the equivalent of the circuit court just basically telling him you are exceeding your authority and you have to stop. Not even it's not even like an appeal, because in an appeal, you decide a case and the district court sends the opinion up to the circuit court and the circuit court says you got it right or you got it wrong. This isn't that. They're not even deciding the merits. This is just the circuit saying, Judge Boasberg, you have gone too far. You are exceeding your authority. The things you are doing, you should not be doing. Flat stop. You have to stop. You have to stop what you're doing. It's a remarkable slapdown. So, that was, I think, an interesting point but I don't know. Do you guys want to do foreign policy or do you guys want to do domestic stuff? What are you in the mood for? Legal analysis or political analysis and geopolitics? Let me know what you say in chat. Let me know what you're interested in doing, and we'll take it from there. I'm open to suggestion. Open to suggestion. Meanwhile, while you guys are thinking about that, I got my Glenlivet. Delightful. Delightful. So while people are figuring out what they want to do content wise, what was I going to say? Oh, coming up. So I am going to have the third, Counter Connor and I have had, two conversations. We finally were getting to the heart of it in the last one. So I'm going to talk to Connor on Friday morning. I think it'll be around 10-ish. So let me put up a poll. Okay, so we'll start a poll. That sounds. Hey, holy shit! Does he know how to do that? We will find out. Lol. Jesus Christ, you guys! I can't say I haven't earned that. I can't say I haven't earned that. I probably did earn that. But still, that stings. Jefferson with the $2. Thanks, buddy. Just don't mention Gibbs around Connor, I guess. Okay, so seriously, Jefferson, serious point. Do I not bring that up when we talk? Or do I, does Connor have a sense of humor? If I give Connor a little shit about the fact that he showed up like super drunk and then rage quit, is he gonna lose his shit or is he gonna laugh about it? I mean, it's not entirely clear to me. Me and Connor have always got along, but I've never been in this situation. Wait, Connor and Wick are beardless? What is this a thing? Why are people shaving their beards? Beards are awesome. Did they both lose the same bet? Seriously, did they why did they shave? Why would they do that? It's a destiny humiliation ritual. What he likes to watch him shave? Is that what it is? Oh, is this the new PV? Is this the new PV? They have a new digital ground game. What's the new progressive victory sort of thing? Okay, well, how long do you think that's going to last? You think you think this new PV is going to last long before it turns into all the shittiness of the old PV? It seems like it's going to be the same shit, different day. It seems like it's going to be the same shit, different day. Oh, okay. Wick shave for cash. That's a good reason to shave. That's a good reason to shave. Well, yeah, I mean, it looks like they made a bunch of money. So good for them, I guess. I mean, is this a I assume like a centristy left, or is it like a rabid left sort of vibe? I feel like PV was like trying to convince everybody it was a kind of a center left vibe for a while, and then it turned out to be anything but. So we'll see. I think these orgs tend to. Oh, pretty sure it's in response to the far left people. Well, that's promising then. If you're going to organize the left, organizing them in opposition to the Hassan types is the correct way to do it. So good for them. Good for them. That's great. Okay. Well, it looks like law is winning by a country mile, so we're going to do law. So, for those of you voting for geopolitics, democracy's a rough game. Don't know what to tell you. Don't know what to tell you. Okay. So let's talk some basics. Just some background. One of the things I've been talking about with Rob a lot is this idea that there's something that happens in the legal news cycle that's incredibly frustrating, where there's a story, and the story is about Trump did something terrible. X administration did something awful. Something bad happened. Look how bad, they're ignoring the order, whatever it is. And you get this big headline. And then the case continues. And there's all kinds of legal developments, but you don't hear about it anymore. You don't hear about it anymore. And the problem with that is that you get this big pop here, Trump bad. But then along the way, you find out this judge is doing some weird stuff. This judge is taking actions that ultimately are inappropriate. So, what is it that the administration is supposed to do when faced with a judge that's vastly exceeding their authority? Now, you might have heard about this in the context of, that's not a very helpful screen. See, I can still do boomer stuff now and again. You might have heard about this in the context of this story. This was about the Border Patrol chief, Bavino, and Judge Sarah Ellis in Illinois. She had ordered him to come into her courtroom and give a status update each weekday at 6 p.m. local time to report to her on immigration activities in Chicago that he was spearheading, right? Now, this is a wild excess. Now, at the time, the story was ICE did bad thing, judge reining them in, judge orders him to come in every day. Look how extreme they are that they're getting reined in. But when this went up to the circuit court, the appellate court said that you can't do that. A district court judge cannot supervise an executive officer. You can decide a case. You can say you did right, you did wrong, here's the penalty for doing wrong. But a judge cannot supervise the executive because separation of powers. The judges are here judging cases. The executives are here executing the law. The judge cannot leap over here and become the supervisor of the executive. It's a separation of powers violation, and a pretty serious one. And, so I remember all the stories about how Bavino was being forced into this because of all the terrible things he did and all the political hay that was made of this. But then, it falls on us to kind of track and explain that what the judge did was wildly inappropriate, and was in fact corrected by the district court as a result. Now, one of the big players in this, judicial saga that we've had recently is this man, Judge Boasberg. He has a very interesting look. So you definitely remember him when you see him. So Judge Boasberg has become a big, big figure. Why? Well, do you remember back with the Alien Enemies Act? This is a long time ago. Back then, we were saying, why is Trump, are we in a conflict with Venezuela? And of course, it turns out we were in a conflict with Venezuela. But so Judge Boasberg was the judge who got the case about the planes. Remember this? This was when there was a wave of people who were being deported, and they were deported under the Alien Enemies Act because they were alleged to have been terrorists who were, part of Tren de Agua and were part of this Venezuelan network that was, essentially conducting illegal, irregular warfare in the United States. At least that's what the administration says. Obviously, there's people who think differently. And they were being deported under the Alien Enemies Act. Judge Boasberg came in because the planes were in the air, and he ordered the planes back. Now, Judge Boasberg was ultimately subject already to one mandamus order because he exceeded his authority. What do I mean by that? Well, it turns out that when you bring a habeas petition because ICE is trying to deport you, you're supposed to do it where the people are being held. That was Texas. But instead, they brought the case in DC. Now, I can tell you as an attorney, you do this because you're engaging in forum shopping. You're looking for the district where there's going to be judges who are going to be more helpful to you. Right. So they brought it in DC, but eventually it was ruled that he didn't have authority to do this, and that he should not have been issuing rulings. So that's kind of the background of this. He's been slapped down again. And I think it might make more sense to actually look at the opinion because they give you a lot of background on this. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Here's why. The majority wrote a lengthy opinion, which I'll summarize and read parts of. The dissent wrote like 80 pages, and I'm not reading 80 pages. But I think they do a great job explaining the issue, and this is the sort of thing that people need to know about because it colors the way you view the law and these legal stories. Jefferson C. Post with 2. Thanks, buddy. News follow district or supreme, not circuit. I don't know. You're right, man. Like it's the splashy first story or it's the Supreme Court, but nobody when the circuit courts weigh in, nobody seems to care. It's really, really odd. Really odd. Okay. So here's the case. Came out today. Written by Rao, the circuit court judge. And she gives an excellent background. More than a year ago, let me get my highlighter ready. The president invoked the Alien Enemies Act against members of Tren de Aragua. I can't pronounce that. Aragua? I'm going to say Aragua and hope that's as good as I can do. A Venezuelan criminal gang and foreign terrorist organization, and ordered that they be detained and removed from the United States. In a series of fast-moving events on March 15, 2025, the government placed a group of alleged gang members, including plaintiffs in this case, on planes to El Salvador. That's what we were talking about. They got put on the planes. They're going to be deported. After the planes took off and left the country, the district court ordered the government not to remove the plaintiffs from the United States. Question: does the district court have authority to do this when the planes are already in the air? The Supreme Court vacated the district court's order. So the Supreme Court said, no, the district court was wrong to do that because it was premised on a legal error. And the plaintiff suit was brought in the wrong court. They should have sued in Texas, not DC. Nonetheless, the district court threatened to hold government officials in criminal contempt unless they complied with the now vacated order by, for instance, taking back custody of the plaintiffs. Think about that for a second. Judge Boasberg issues an order, turn the planes around. The Supreme Court says you lack jurisdiction to give that order. You lack, Judge Boasberg, the power to give that order. Then, how does he respond? He says, even though I lack the power, I'm going to investigate whether the government should be criminally charged, prosecuted for criminal contempt for failing to honor and obey my order that I didn't have the power to issue. I'm going to see whether I can hold them in criminal contempt for following my order, which was without legal basis. That's a pretty bold move. So what happened? The circuit court issued mandamus. Mandamus is an order where the circuit court commands the district court. They say, you are exceeding your authority. You must stop. You must stop. Right? So he issued a writ of mandamus vacating the court's first contempt order, because obviously you can't hold people in contempt following an order not following an order that you don't have power to issue. So already this is a crazy paragraph. Like, just reading this is like, wait, what? How on earth could you hold the government officials in criminal contempt for something that you didn't have the power to do? Is he done? Is he done? No, he's not done. Undeterred, the district court is proceeding with criminal contempt for the government's decision to transfer the plaintiffs to the custody of El Salvador. To cooperate, the government identified then Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem as the official responsible for the transfer decision. The district court previously said this was the only information it required to make a referral for criminal prosecution. The judge said, if you tell me who made this decision, I'm going to give their names to the AUSAs. They gave the name. But the district court has now expanded its inquest and ordered hearings to extract more information from government counsel about what exactly happened last March. The government petitions for mandamus. Now, again, here's how crazy this is. The court can't bring criminal charges, right? The court can't bring criminal charges. What the court could do is refer it. They could say, we think that the government should be held in contempt. AUSAs bring a case, right? They could sanction the lawyers. There's things they could do. They could hold people who are in court in contempt. But to have this kind of investigation about the decision and whether to charge ex-Secretary Kristi Noem with a crime, that courts can't do that. So he's holding like an inquisition. He's trying to get like an inquisition into the government's decision making. But this isn't the role of a judge. This is the role of a prosecutor. Could a court even do that in a property dispute? For instance, order that a party get the property back from someone they sold it to? Yeah, they could. They actually could. If you had like a fraudulent conveyance, a court could unwind a transaction and order that it be reversed. So they certainly can do that. That's a good word. The widening gyre. That's a good one. The widening gyre of the district court's investigation. Again, I love that phrase. I'm going to use that. Calls for the extraordinary remedy of mandamus to halt the judicial impairment of another branch in the performance of its constitutional duty. So here we go. Separation of powers again. The district court proposes to probe high-level executive branch deliberations about matters of national security and diplomacy. These proceedings are a clear abuse of discretion, as the district court's order said nothing about transferring custody of the plaintiffs and therefore lacks the clarity to support criminal contempt based on a transfer of custody. Yeah, he's not even talking about the issue before him, the planes, which wasn't even before him. It was actually jurisdictionally supposed to be in Texas. Now he's just asking, like, who made this decision? Who's violating my order? I command you. I commanded you. Who resisted my command? Moreover, the government has already provided the name of the responsible official, so further judicial investigation is unnecessary and therefore improper. In these circumstances, mandamus is inappropriate to prevent the district court from assuming an antagonistic jurisdiction that encroaches on the autonomy of the executive branch. But, well, yes, this is the point. Jefferson, that's exactly the point. This is why the Supreme Court ultimately only ordered that return be facilitated in the Kilmar case, because the district court can't order the president to do anything with a foreign country in terms of negotiations, and they can't order the foreign country to do anything. So, like he's trying this workaround where he's trying to hold government officials in contempt, but it's really straining judicial power. That's really not what judges are supposed to be doing. Our assessment of the government's second petition for writ of mandamus must account for the remarkable procedural posture of this case. We proceed by recounting the escalating exchanges between the district court and the government that brought us to this stage. On March 14th, the president invoked his authority under the Alien Enemies Act and proclaimed that Trinidad had perpetrated an invasion or predatory incursion. Yes, we remember this. The president directed the Attorney General and Secretary of Homeland Security to, consistent with applicable law, apprehend, restrain, secure, remove the TDA members who are not naturalized or lawful permanent residences. Hey, Kay, what's going on? In the early hours the next day, TDA members were detained in Texas. And remember, they were detained in Texas. That's important. And they were transported to a nearby airport in preparation for their removal from the United States. Counsel for 5 of the detainees learned of the planned removals and filed suits in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. So you might be asking yourself, if the plaintiffs are in Texas, why are they suing in DC? What's the strategy there? You probably figure that one out if you think about it for a second. The complaint named the president, the attorney general, and secretary of Homeland Security and other executive branch officers and officials and agencies as defendants. They brought Administrative Procedure Acts, habeas corpus claims, and they sought to have a class to get around the no universal injunctions rule. They also requested a temporary restraining order enjoining their removal from the United States. The district court issued an ex parte order at 9:40 a.m. Ex parte means without the other party. So the district court didn't hear from the government. They just issued an order that said the government must stop removing these people for 14 days without talking to the government first. The government returned the named plaintiffs to the detention facility. So the government honored the request. At 5 p.m. the same day, the district court held an emergency hearing to determine whether to certify a class of the detainees and give relief. The district court asked the government counsel whether any removals under the Alien Enemies Proclamation were planned for the next 24 or 48 hours. Counsel responded he did not know, but would try to find out. The district court adjourned the hearing until 6 p.m. so he could learn back. So he gave him an hour to figure out what was happening. While the hearing was adjourned, 2 flights departed. Okay, so this is what made Boasberg mad. He's having the hearing at 5. He asks, is anybody going to leave? At 6, he gives them till 6, but while they're not out of the courtroom, planes take off. So now Boasberg's mad because it seems like people are flouting his authority. Okay. When the hearing resumed, plaintiff's counsel informed the district court that 2 flights had already departed and another flight was expected to follow. I don't know how they knew that. The government might know that. How did plaintiff's counsel know that? Interesting. Observing that flights are actively departing and planned to depart, the district court provisionally certified a class of detainees. Relying on the plaintiff's APA claims, he issued a class-wide temporary restraining order. And he said, you shall inform your clients of this immediately, that any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in air needs to be returned to the United States. But those people need to be returned to the United States. However that's accomplished, whether turning around a plane or not embarking anyone on the plane or those people covered by this on the plane, I leave it to you. But this is something that you need to make sure is complied with immediately. Okay. So he's saying turn around the planes, everything you have to do, get them back. Now, in hindsight, we know that he didn't have jurisdiction. The Texas court had jurisdiction. But at the time, nobody knew that, in fairness, right? Like maybe he knew it, but that wasn't yet decided. So several hours after this, the 2 planes that had departed before the TRE issued arrived in El Salvador, and and the Salvadoran authorities transferred most of the detainees to the Center for Terrorism Confinement. Okay, so the planes get to El Salvador despite the order. Cheers. Now, what do we learn after that point? Hey, well, John, what's going on, buddy? How's you doing? Because habeas petitions must be brought in the district of confinement, the court held that the government was likely to succeed on the merits because the District of Columbia was not the proper venue for the detainees. So this is the circuit court weighs in. Is that circuit court or Supreme Court? No, this is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court vacated this TRO because it said, you're supposed to do this in Texas. You're not supposed to do this in DC. You're not supposed to do this in DC. This is the Texas issue because the people were in Texas. You don't have jurisdiction. If a court doesn't have jurisdiction, they have no power. So this case is improperly brought. Despite the Supreme Court's vacatur of the TRO, meaning the TRO, Judge Boasberg's order is gone, the district court nonetheless forged ahead with criminal contempt proceedings on the theory that the government had violated the TRO by transferring the detainees to Salvadoran custody. Recognizing that the vacated TRO could not serve as the basis for civil contempt, the district court nonetheless reasoned that the fact that the TRO was legally unsound is no obstacle to a criminal contempt conviction. Really think about that for a second. The guy says, I gave an order and I'm going to hold you in criminal contempt for violating my order. And then the Supreme Court of the United States says, your order is vacated. Your order has ceased to be because you lacked legal authority to give that order. And he says, nonetheless, I'm going to hold people in criminal contempt for failing to follow my illegal order. Think about, I mean, this is a crazy paragraph. That's just a crazy paragraph, right? This is the court. Yeah, it's exactly, folks. This is the court ignoring the court. Wild. The court found probable cause that the government committed criminal contempt. On the district court's view, the TRO was a clear and unequivocal command that anyone on a removal flight that had already landed abroad should not be discharged from U.S. custody and turned over to Salvadoran authorities. And the government had willfully disobeyed. Now, of course, it was a command, and you could make a good argument that the government disobeyed, but he didn't have authority to issue the command. The hubris here is wild. According to the district court, the only step left on the path to criminal contempt was to identify the individuals responsible. Identify the individuals responsible. I can never pronounce this word. So this word means like reticent, like someone who just ignores orders is. I'm not even going to try. Does anyone know this word? I can't pronounce this word. I write this word sometimes because in New York, when you are saying that another lawyer is disobeying a court order, this is the legal term you use. But I've never had to say it out loud. I've only had to write it. Let's find out. Archaic law, especially if a defendant is stubbornly or willful disobedient behavior. Play. Why is it not playing? Okay, this stupid website. Contumacious. 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 Okay, contumacious. Responsible for the contumacious conduct. So the district court could ask the government to prosecute that individual. Ask the government to prosecute. By the way, they're going to ask the government to prosecute itself. Hilarious. Or if the government declined, to appoint another attorney to prosecute the contempt. So imagine this. He wants to say the government ignored my order. Now, my order was without legal authority, but they ignored my order that had no legal authority. And I want it prosecuted. And if they don't prosecute it, I'm going to appoint another attorney to prosecute it because they refused to, perhaps because it had no legal force. The district court offered to forego referral if the government came into compliance. If the government complies, if the government complies with my illegal order, then I won't try to prosecute you, something that I, the court, have no power to do. Wild. This is truly insane. So here we are. Just backing up for a second. Like, Judge Boasberg issued an order that said you may not send anybody to El Salvador. You can't have these people in the TDA deported and sent over there because I have a temporary restraining order. The government did it anyway. Later, it was determined he never had power to issue that order. Despite the fact that he never had power to issue that order, his workaround is he's going to say, I never had power to issue the order, and in fact, I have no jurisdiction over this case. If the government doesn't listen to me, I'm going to try to bring criminal charges against them. And if they won't bring criminal charges because judges lack the power to prosecute, I will appoint a lawyer to bring criminal charges anyway against Kristi Noem as the person who gave this order. And then, by the way, government, if you comply with my illegal order, I won't bring criminal charges against you, which I lack the power to do. So obviously the government goes back to the circuit court and says, what is happening? This guy is like a runaway train. Jefferson, thanks for the 2, buddy. Judicial equivalent of provoking cops then filming? Kind of, yeah. I mean, this is like, I can't stress to you, Jefferson, how wild this is. This is like a wild fact pattern. This is just poking the bear when you say, like, I lack the authority, but I can hold you in criminal contempt for not following my illegal order. Wild. We granted the petition and vacated the probable cause order because the district court had clearly exceeded its lawful authority. This is back in 2025. This isn't even the case we're currently talking about. They're just talking about the stuff they already did with this judge, not the stuff that is currently before the court. This is just the history, right? So imagine this judge had this happen and then kept going. We concluded that because the TRO is insufficiently clear, there is no possibility for a criminal contempt conviction. Judge Rao concluded that the specific legal error consisted in leveraging the threat of criminal contempt to force the government's compliance with an order the Supreme Court had vacated. Yeah, you can't use criminal contempt to force people to comply with an order that was vacated by the Supreme Court. I know, maybe I'm speaking legalese, but this should be obvious, right? If the order was vacated, if the Supreme Court said you lack the power to do this, you can't hold people in criminal contempt for failing to comply. Okay, although the 2 judges in the majority identified different legal errors, they agreed mandamus was appropriate and the criminal contempt proceedings in the area of foreign affairs raised grave separation of powers concerns. Judge Rao also highlighted the difficult questions that would arise from initiating criminal contempt against senior executive branch officials, because who's going to enforce that? Who's going to prosecute it? This is the executive branch is the one who's in charge of doing that. And explained that if the district court chooses the problematic and uncertain path of criminal contempt, the government may seek relief from this court to remedy any specific actions. Okay. So here we are. Here we are. Doesn't contempt of court only matter whether they disobeyed a court order, regardless if the matter was later overruled? At the time it was valid and it was disobeyed. Well, that's his theory. That's his theory, Lucky. That is, of course, his theory. But if you recall, what they just said is that This circuit court judge, at least Judge Rao, concluded that the specific legal error consisted in leveraging the threat of criminal contempt to force the government's compliance with an order the Supreme Court had vacated. Right? So at least this circuit court judge, Lucky, disagrees with you. And of course, this is the circuit court judge, Judge Rao, who is writing this opinion. So her opinion is going to matter quite a bit. So I take the point you're making, Lucky, because at the time, it wasn't known whether the order was lawful or unlawful, like it was little Schrodinger's box. But ultimately, it was determined to be unlawful. So the question is, and remember, Lucky, he didn't just threaten criminal prosecution. He said, I'm going to prosecute you unless you comply with my order. But the order was illegal. Right? So let's do the timeline, right? He says no planes. The planes take off. It's ruled illegal later. So when the planes took off, there's a good argument they were violating a court order. I take that point. But the problem is, down here, he's saying, even though my order was illegal, you have to follow it. And if you don't follow it, I'm going to leverage criminal contempt against you. Well, how is it that he's changing executive policy through leveraging criminal contempt, right? If he had just said, okay, I think Kristi Noem should be charged with contempt, here's her name, go prosecute her, this wouldn't have happened. But he was trying to maintain control of the case, but he has no jurisdiction. So I guess the question I would ask you is, if we're very worried about a district court, about people disobeying district court orders, and that's a fair thing to be worried about, shouldn't we be equally or more worried about a district court that's ignoring Supreme Court orders? Right? Like he's doing the thing he's complaining about. Luke, member for a month. Thanks for being a supporter, buddy. I appreciate you. More like charging resisting arrest on its own. Yeah, it's an odd thing to do, but it's not just charging it. It's charging it and then saying, if you do what I want, I won't charge you. Right? Like, imagine if he was like, all right, well, I'm going to charge you with contempt unless you cut taxes. Right? Like, the judge can't control policy like that. He can't, and he certainly can't leverage an illegal order to get control over the executive branch. So after we issued the extraordinary writ of mandamus, the district court concluded it could and should pursue criminal contempt. So they told him no, and he said, yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. First, picking up where it left off in the vacated probable cause order, the district court ordered the parties to propose next steps in the court's criminal contempt inquiry, suggesting the government could start by providing names of people it believes had a role. While maintaining that transferring custody to El Salvador did not violate the TRO, the government identified Secretary Noem as the person who was responsible. Unsatisfied, the district court next ordered the government to submit declarations from all individuals involved in the decision not to halt the transfers. The government complied and gave declarations from Secretary Noem and counsel from the DOJ and the Department of Homeland Security. The declarations confirmed that Secretary had made the decision after receiving legal advice from those attorneys. At that point, the government had provided everything the district court had indicated was necessary to make a criminal contempt referral. Okay, so the judge said, look, I want the name, who did this. Now, and to Lucky's point earlier, let's say that you're saying, look, it's a crime to ignore my order, even if it was later overruled. I want to know who committed the crime, and I'm going to refer them to the DOJ. Okay, now you have the name. You have the name, Secretary Noem, right? So if all you want to do is refer it to the DOJ, you have the name, right? You're done. But instead of giving a referral, the district court again moved the goalpost. In its latest order, the court proposed further judicial investigation. Courts are not normally investigating bodies. That's what the executive does. into whether the Secretary's decision was a willful violation of the TRO. The district court sought live testimony to investigate the basis of the decision to transfer the deportees out of the United States custody. The order directed the appearance of 2 witnesses who were counsel for the government. So the lawyers who gave the legal advice, they're gonna have to testify. The first witness filed a whistleblower complaint alleging misconduct by Justice Department officials involved in the litigation, while the second witness continues to serve as government counsel in the underlying litigation. The order explicitly permitted plaintiff's counsel to participate in questioning the witnesses. So they're going to have the plaintiff's counsel jump in and ask questions of the witnesses. Having already identified the responsible official and provided declarations, the government vigorously protested any further investigation, because why are you investigating? You already have, if you want to refer it as a crime, you can do it. What more do you need to learn? The government argued that the district court had already had all the information it needed to make a referral, and that any further investigation would usurp the executive's prosecutorial power, because the power to investigate and prosecute crimes is not a judge's, it's the executive's. And that's what separation of powers is. In denying the government's motion for reconsideration, the district court explained that revisiting probable cause was warranted because this court had vacated the probable cause order, and in the whistleblower complaint, former counsel for the government had brought new evidence to light. Furthermore, the court found the plaintiffs were uniquely positioned to assist the court in its investigation, while admitting they could have no role in an actual contempt prosecution initiated. The government again petitions for a mandamus. So, going back, the court issues an order. Maybe it was a good order, maybe it was a bad order. You could have a difference of opinion about that. But the order was ultimately deemed unlawful. He did not have authority. Nonetheless, he files up a criminal contempt proceeding. Okay, you could make the argument that criminal contempt could be appropriate for disobeying an order, even if the order was later deemed to be unlawful. Okay. But he's not doing that. He's going further. He wants to do an investigation. He wants to do an inquest. He wants to have plaintiff's counsel who are not government officials, who are not involved in criminal referrals or prosecutions at all. He wants them to question government officials, government lawyers, to try to develop a case for criminal prosecution. He's stepping into executive branch territory now. He's no longer just deciding the case. He's trying to influence what is investigated and what is not investigated. So you see the problem and where the mandamus is going to fall. Judges acting like kings. When did this become excused for doing the right thing? Pretty crazy. Yeah, I mean, this is an extraordinary excess. An extraordinary excess. Mandamus may issue only if 3 requirements are met. The petitioner has no other adequate means of relief. There is a clear and indisputable right to relief, and the court is satisfied that mandamus is appropriate under the circumstances. Okay, so now they're giving the standard for mandamus. We don't really need to read that. Disregarding the first reasons for the writ of mandamus, the district court now has the district court has launched a criminal contempt investigation against a senior executive branch official. The district court previously found the government willfully violated the TRO and sought to identify the responsible official in order to make a referral. The government has attested that Secretary Nome was the responsible official. Rather than decide whether to make a referral to the Department of Justice, the district court has ordered further investigation into high-level executive branch deliberations surrounding the events of March 15, 2025. Mandamus is appropriate again to forestall unwarranted judicial intrusion into executive branch decision-making regarding matters of national security. Separation of powers. Separation of powers. The court cannot supervise the DOJ, cannot supervise Secretary Nome. The court can decide the case in front of it. By the way, this case was never in front of it. It lacked jurisdiction. But nonetheless, it is stepping into the shoes of the executive branch, which is inappropriate. First, the government has no other means to attain the relief it seeks because ordinary appellate process cannot adequately redress the harms created by the district court's unnecessary investigation. Because if you let the investigation proceed, there's no ruling, right? No, you appeal a ruling, but the court's not ruling. It's just doing things it's illegal for it to do. Lucky, what would be the correct process for this? What usually happens? Does it matter if the ignored? What you would do, Lucky, is what they said he should have done, which is that he figured out who ignored his order, and then if he wants a criminal investigation, he can refer that. He can request that. He can make a criminal referral to a prosecutor. But he can't bring a criminal case. He's a judge. He's not a prosecutor. Judges can't initiate cases. Jefferson C. Post with a 5. Thanks, buddy. Am I correct in reading vacatur as a court ruling that something like a judgment order never happened because it legally couldn't happen? Yeah, it's they vacated the order, right? So it's like the order goes up, and then in this case there's a TRO, right? So the district court says I'm issuing a temporary restraining order, therefore this the government should have to turn the plane around because I'm restraining them from taking these people to El Salvador. And then the Supreme Court says we vacate that order. That order is without authority. He never had jurisdiction. That order is poof, gone, right? It's vacated. Which is why, by the way, Judge Rao, though not every judge in this case, but Judge Rao said it's inappropriate to use criminal contempt to try to enforce a vacated order because the order was vacated, right? Which is, Lucky and I have been talking about what's the correct means for solving a problem like this. But the flip side of that argument is the order was vacated. There's no problem to solve. There was never any authority. So first, to get mandamus, there has to be no other means of getting relief. The government requests an end to the district court's ongoing criminal contempt proceedings. The government suggests the district court may refer section known for prosecution if it believes criminal contempt occurs. Yep, the court can make a referral. Nonetheless, the government maintains the district court's ongoing investigation exceeds its authority and trammels separation of powers by intruding on the authority and constitutional prerogatives of the executive branch, because the judicial branch does not investigate crimes. Immediate appeal is unavailable, and review you can't appeal this because there hasn't been a decision yet. In a case, you can only appeal a final decision. Or if there's what's called interlocutory appeal, then you can appeal at earlier stages. But there has to be a decision that you're appealing. Here, the problem isn't the decision. The problem is that he's holding an investigation that he lacks the power to have. So they need mandamus relief because they need to tell him you lack the authority to hold this kind of investigation. The harms of further judicial investigation cannot be remedied by later appeal. Yeah, because if you let this play out, the government's going to be beholden to the judge. Even if they overturn him later, he's still intruding on their constitutional prerogatives in the interim. When the executive alleges judicial intrusion into its deliberations, courts must recognize the paramount necessity of protecting the executive branch from vexatious litigation. Of course, here, the vexatious litigation is from a judge, which is pretty wild. Well, now the higher courts have to rule on temporary decisions because they've been so abused. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like this is the reason. That's why I wanted to read this, Jefferson, is because I think people hyperfixate on, there's a lot of news stories about Trump violated this order, Trump violated that order, but this is the court violating a Supreme Court order, right? And then ignoring a circuit court order. So, this is at least as bad, probably worse in terms of clear violation of the law. So this is the thing. People treat this like a one-way ratchet, and I'm not saying that everything Trump did was right. And I think Lucky I thought made a good point. You can make that argument that even if the order was later invalidated, you should have followed it at the time. That's a fair argument, by the way. That's not a crazy argument. That's a totally fair argument. But I just feel like the one-way ratchet is inappropriate, where people get so up in arms about whatever the story of the day is with the Trump administration and the courts. And then we find out later that the lower courts are like wildly misbehaving. They're wildly overstepping their boundaries. But that doesn't seem to get the same level of concern. And when people say, oh, Trump's attacking judges, right? But it's like, okay, I'm sure there are some judges where he did that where it wasn't warranted, but this is pretty wild stuff. Okay, so they're saying you can't intrude on the executive authority. Again, separation of powers. The executive is the one who investigates crimes. The judge doesn't. The judge can say, I think there's a crime, let me refer it to the executive, but he can't hold an inquest. This is not what courts do. These separation of powers interests are front and center in this case, involving the president's decisions under the Alien Enemies Act. The district court proposes to conduct further fact-finding into high-level executive branch deliberations about the implementation of the president's directive to expel members of a foreign terrorist organization of the United States. The president found that members of TDA are perpetrating an invasion or predatory incursion, undertaking hostile actions, and conducting irregular warfare against the territory of the United States, both directly and at the direction of the Maduro regime in Venezuela. Well, it used to be the Maduro regime. I mean, imagine if this was a different president. Like, imagine if Obama had been like, I think that there are spies. There are spies from a hostile nation in the country, and we're deporting them. And then like a judge tied them up in court and said, no, you got to keep those spies. You got to keep them. You can't deport the spies. Crazy. All I can hear is Destiny screaming in my head, Trump's ignoring court orders. Well, this is a good response. This is a very good response to that. Now, of course, what they're saying here, the AEA proclamation has been followed by diplomatic and military initiatives against the regime of Maduro. So it turns out, by the way, when Trump said that like we were in a conflict with Venezuela, it turns out we were in a conflict with Venezuela. You and I might not have known that back then, but I suppose he did. And he, of course, would have. Moreover, the district court continues to expand the scope of its investigation because it certainly intends to find out what happened on March 15th. Resting nominally on the need to probe Secretary No's willfulness, the court's hearings would also allow plaintiffs' counsel to question government officials. Think about that. They're going to have the plaintiff's lawyers step in and question the government official about why they, like, whether they committed a crime. But plaintiffs' counsel are not prosecutors. They have no criminal authority. He's just going to have them do it. Brian with a 5. Thanks, buddy. Is this a Trump era issue with the amount of judges stepping beyond their bounds, or has this amount of overstepping always been? This is very rare. I don't have stats, but I suspect this is a Trump era thing. Because mandamus is an extraordinary remedy. Courts don't issue mandamus to each other very often. When they do, it's in very particular circumstances. The two where you get mandamus a lot, in patent litigation, there's a weird procedural quirk where mandamus happens a lot, not because courts are really misbehaving, but because that's just the way the law is structured. And you see it sometimes in like hurry up cases in the immigration context. Like if it's been taking too long for the government to issue a green card, you might sue for mandamus to make them hurry up. But this sort of thing where like it's mandamus against the circuit court to the district court because the district court is exceeding its authority, that's super rare. You don't see that very often. You've seen 3 in the first year of Trump, with 2 against Boasberg. This one and the one that we read about, and then also the one in Chicago. So it is pretty rare. The participation of opposing counsel in this investigation of criminal contempt is improper in these circumstances. Enabling interested plaintiffs to wield the sword of coercive investigation creates opportunities for private interest to influence the discharge of a public duty. Yeah, this is not a power for the plaintiff's counsel to wield. They don't get to decide who commits crimes or investigate. The proposed hearings anticipate airing whistleblower grievances and allowing plaintiffs' counsel to participate. These proceedings improperly threaten an open-ended, freewheeling inquiry into executive branch decision-making on matters of national security that implicate ongoing military and diplomatic initiatives. Of course, imagine having an open court hearing with cameras and reporters talking about the executive branch deliberations about their military strategy, about their strategy for dealing with Maduro, their strategy for combating Venezuela, their strategy for combating what they've referred to as terrorism. Like, even if you don't have to be a Trump guy to think about this. Just think about this in general. Like, imagine that a president was forced to give this information. It's pretty wild. The government's imminent harms are amplified by the fact that the burden imposed by these hearings is wholly unnecessary for making a referral. I mean, the government identified Secretary Noem as the responsible official. So the district court possesses the information it identified as necessary for making a referral. Remember, the court said, tell us who did it, and I'm going to refer them for contempt. They said it was Secretary Noem. And then they kept going. And they kept going and tried to use the investigation as a cudgel to force compliance with an order which was itself illegal. The Supreme Court has admonished this court not to wait for a confrontation between the executive branch and the court to issue mandamus because occasions for constitutional confrontation between the two branches should be avoided. The district court's improper and unnecessary investigation with its shifting scope and justification intrudes upon the executive in a matter for which mandamus is the only adequate remedy. Boom. So, mandamus is needed to fix this problem. We also conclude that the government's right to termination of these proceedings is clear and indisputable. A petitioner satisfies this requirement, which is another element for mandamus, if the challenged order constitutes a clear abuse of discretion. Abuse of discretion means, it's legal term. It means that what the district court is doing is like, okay, here's discretion. The law says that the district court could make decisions within this box. Now, maybe this is a bad decision, and maybe that's a good decision, but they're both in the box, right? Judges, if judge has discretion, he might make a decision that's bad or good, but it's within the discretion, so it's within bounds, so it's not an abuse. Abuse of discretion is when, like, here's the range of permissible decisions, and the judge is like way over here. Like, he's abused his discretion. He's gone well beyond what could possibly be within his purview to decide. The legal error at the heart of these criminal contempt proceedings demonstrates why further investigation by the district court is an abuse of discretion. Criminal contempt is available only for the violation of an order that is clear and specific. The TRO did not clearly and specifically bar the government from transferring plaintiffs into Salvadorian custody. The TRO therefore cannot support criminal contempt, and the district court clearly abused its discretion by launching the inquest of decision-making into executive branch officers. So they're saying that the TRO is not specific enough for this crime to work. So this whole thing is ridiculous and shouldn't have happened. This is a new argument that they're making now. So we'll see how they land the plane. In order for criminal contempt, you have to have an order that is clear and reasonably specific. The defendant must have violated the order, and the violation must have been willful. So clear order, violation, and it had to have been on purpose. Although the district court has focused its investigation on willfulness, the legal error in these proceedings centers on the first element. A clear and specific order is essential. So they're saying that the order was not clear and specific enough for there to be a contempt violation. I'm curious to hear why. Okay. They're repeating the same thing. You can't be punished unless there's no uncertainty. It has to be a very clear order. So what's unclear about this order? They review the language. Okay. The district court is investigating alleged criminal contempt based on the government's transfer of plaintiffs to Salvadoran custody. Because the TRO did not clearly or specifically prohibit the transfer, it cannot support the ongoing criminal contempt investigation. The TRO's restriction provided in full. So here's the TRO. The government is enjoined, means so they may not, from removing members of the class not otherwise subject to removal pursuant to the proclamation for 14 days or until further order of the court. So they're not allowed to remove them. So I'm guessing the question is, what if they've already been removed, right? If the plane's already in the air before this order was issued, they've already been removed. Does this order actually stop you from giving them to El Salvador because the order just says they cannot be removed? They're not subject to removal. But I guess the arguments can be that they were already removed. Starting with the text of the order, it said nothing at all about transferring the plaintiffs out of the custody of the United States. There was no specific directive as to what the government had to do with the plaintiffs who were already outside of the territory of the United States. They were already removed. The district court maintains the TRO protected the government from relinquishing custody, but the TRO says nothing about custody. Criminal contempt cannot lie from transferring custody when the TRO was silent as to that requirement. So here's the argument they're making. And this is a kind of a classic legal argument. You remember Luke and I were going back and forth about can you be held in contempt for an order which is illegal? And I gave an argument why you couldn't, and he gave an argument why you could. And you can see that one judge thinks that's agreed with me, one judge agreed with Luke. So this is, and I said this was a viable issue. So there's arguments on both sides. Now, in order to resolve the case, they're trying to find a ground that is less contentious than that. So what they're saying is, in order for there to be a criminal contempt charge, you have to show that they violated a clear order. Your order said no removal, but these people had already been removed. You said they shouldn't have been transferred to Venezuelan custody, to El Salvadorian custody, but the order didn't say that. It said no removals. The removal already happened. So the question is that actually a violation of the order, and is it sufficiently clear? Despite the absence of an explicit directive against transferring custody, the district court insists that the order barred removing the plaintiffs somehow also prohibited transferring them out of the United States custody, particularly when understood in light of the emergency hearing. An objective interpretation of the TRO's text and circumstances fails to provide a clear directive. To begin with, the ordinary meaning of remove refers to a change in territorial location, not custody. Both legal and lay dictionaries confirm that removing an individual means to move him from one place to another. The legal context of this case, involving the expulsion of aliens pursuant to the AEA proclamation, similarly confirms the understanding of removing refers to removal from the United States territory. When the president faces an invasion or predatory incursion, which is what the AEA is about, against the territory of the United States and makes public proclamation of the event, the Alien Enemies Act authorizes him to provide for the removal of enemy aliens. Under certain circumstances, the AEA also authorizes federal courts to order covered aliens be removed out of the territory of the United States. Removal means, under the AEA, means removal from the United States territory. So the argument is, in this context, the AEA, to remove means to remove from the United States. These people had already been removed. Moreover, the TRO also explicitly referenced other types of removal by enjoining the government from removing members of the class not otherwise subject to removal. The phrase not otherwise subject to removal refers to other statutory removal authorities, which in turn use removal in the territorial sense. For instance, the Immigration and Nationalization Act, INA, includes the phrase any alien ordered to be deported or removed or is left in the United States. In the context of immigration, remove an alien means to expel an alien from the physical territory of the United States. Okay. Yeah, exactly, Jefferson. He's doing like an inquisition. He's acting like a judge empowered to do an inquest, which is not what U.S. judges are generally empowered to do. Good point. Very good point. Okay. So the TRO prohibited removing detainees pursuant to the directive. Because the TRO The two planes were outside of the United States airspace when the TRO issued. No further removal was possible. And the TRO provided no directives whatsoever with respect to plaintiffs who were already outside of the United States. Nothing in the TRO clearly, specifically, much less unequivocally, prohibited the transfer to the custody of El Salvador. So that's the argument the judges decided on. They're saying, look, maybe they disobeyed the order, maybe they didn't. But for criminal contempt, it has to be clear beyond a doubt. It has to be specific. It has to be totally clear what the order said. And the order said no removal. The planes had already left the United States. Removal had already happened. So for the people who were already in El Salvador, it didn't say anything about that. Now, maybe I'm sure Judge Boasberg disagrees. But this is the grounds that the circuit court has ruled on. We can skip ahead a little bit. Okay, they're continuing their argument. The relief the plaintiffs requested reinforces that removal refers to expulsion, because what are the plaintiffs arguing? They're saying you can't remove our clients, you can't deport them. Removal this is actually pretty clear. In the immigration context, removal means physical removal from the United States. This is not like a contentious point, which is why I'm skipping ahead a little bit. It's actually a pretty well-established point. So, to be sure, statements made at the hearing provide some support that the district court was contemplating that any detainees who were removed would have to be returned. The district court told government counsel that any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned. It added, however that's accomplished, whether turning around a plane or not, embarking on anyone on the plane or those people covered up by this on the plane, I leave it to you. While these oral statements were suggestive of some custodial responsibility, they did not clearly and specifically require the government to retain custody. Nor did the district court's oral statements clearly prohibit the transfer of custody or connect removing the planes maintaining custody over them. I actually hear, this might be a hot take. This is a little bit of a reputation problem for Boasberg. Like, he already got mandamus once. If that hadn't happened, if he had not kind of soured the circuit court on the way he was handling this case, I wonder if they would have been more generous to him here. Because you could make the argument, like, yeah, come on, don't you think he meant? He said that, turn the plane around. Don't you think he meant turn the plane around? But I think that he's been disobeying Supreme Court orders. I feel like the circuit court is almost disciplining him here. They're saying, like, we're not giving you the benefit of the doubt. Like, yeah, you said something, but we don't have to give you the benefit of the doubt, and you have not conducted yourself in a way that counsels that we should. So it seems like they are, Jefferson, his oral orders and his written order were different, which is interesting. And that's what they said here. The district court assured the people that it would issue a minute order memorializing this so you don't have to race to write it down. So he said, I'm going to write it down for you, and then he wrote it down. And what he wrote down was different than what he said out loud. And the district court said other things like, once the detainees are out of the country, I'm not sure what I can do about it there. He wasn't sure if he had jurisdiction over people who were already deported. The court's doubt as to this authority is reflected in the TRO, which in fact did not order anything with respect to the detainees already out of the country. So they're saying, like, yeah, we could give you the benefit of the doubt, but you seem to have known at the hearing that you didn't have this power, and you certainly didn't put it in the written order. When a district court makes oral statements that support too plausible interpretations order, the order will often be insufficiently clear. Oh, that's a good point. So that now they're making the argument, let's say there's two interpretations. There's the interpretation that you should turn the plane around based on your oral statements, but then there's another interpretation that says at oral argument, you kind of knew you didn't have the power to order that. Well, if there's two competing interpretations, how can we say that the order is so clear that criminal contempt is appropriate? Much less for a government official. Cheers. The district court has launched an intrusive criminal contempt investigation into whether the government acted willfully when it transferred TDA members to El Salvador in custody. By the end of this investigation is a legal dead end. The TRO simply said nothing about transferring custody, nor did the district court prohibit the transfer of custody in oral statements. In our constitutional system of government, criminal liability cannot turn on the unstated intentions of a district court judge. The pursuit of this improper investigation is a clear abuse of discretion that entails the government to a writ of mandamus. Finally, in exercising our discretion to issue mandamus, we are satisfied the writ is appropriate under the circumstances. Although mandamus is a tool reserved for extraordinary circumstances, this is not a thing they do very often. Someone asked a question earlier, is this common? No, it's an extraordinary remedy. Extraordinary circumstances required. It's an important tool to forestall future error in lower courts. The ordinary appellate process suffices to correct ordinary errors, but mandamus is appropriate when the courts assume an antagonistic jurisdiction. So what are they saying here? Boasberg is going so far above and beyond his jurisdiction that reining him in is just appropriate. It's an extraordinary remedy for an extraordinary abuse of judicial power. It is there to keep courts within their lawful sphere and protect the independence of the judiciary. The district court's widening and unnecessary inquiry into executive branch decision-making conducted on the erroneous premise that the TRO is sufficiently clear and specific is at least a clear abuse of discretion. Mandamus is appropriate to halt the inquest and relieve the executive branch of this improper intrusion into its constitutional prerogatives. So they go on for a little bit. This is kind of a lengthy opinion, but I think that we've hit the point. And they said, well, here, as these shifting and expanding proceedings demonstrate, the district court has assumed an improper jurisdiction antagonistic to the executive branch. That's the heart of it. This is what I was saying up above, where I was reading it and I was saying, like, I feel like they're disciplining him. Now they're just saying it. Like, they're saying that Boasberg is being openly antagonistic to the executive branch of the government, not co-equal separate branches, but he's antagonizing and attacking the executive branch. And they are stepping in to remedy this because his actions are, beyond the scope of his jurisdiction. Now, Walker wrote a concurrence, and I heard that I think that the dissent is like 80 pages long. I'm going to re-roll you guys. I don't have 80 pages in me. I do not have 80 pages in me, but I think this is an important thing to know about, because there's so much yelling and screaming about, did Trump do X, Y, and Z bad thing? Did he ignore X, Y, and Z court? And I think what this shows is that there is a counter narrative that needs to be developed, which is that we can talk about whether or not they ignored the court order here. And by the way, I think that's a good argument. I'm not going to dismiss that argument. I think it's a decent argument. But what about this court, Boasberg, ignoring a Supreme Court order and then going beyond the circuit court issuing mandamus on him? So he had he's the district court. Above him is the circuit. Above them is the Supreme Court. He got kind of disciplined by both the Supreme Court and the circuit court in the same case. And he was still continuing to be openly antagonistic to the executive branch. So, this is, when people say things like judicial coup, they're using extreme language for political effect, and I'll grant you that. But this is the sort of thing they're talking about, where, on one hand, I see the point. People make, like, should the government obey an order even if it's unlawful? And that's a fair point. But on the other hand, shouldn't we be concerned about courts issuing unlawful orders when they were expressly told not to by the Supreme Court, by the circuit court? It's a lot. 80 pages of dissent. Yeah, I'm not reading that. Good for you, Boasberg. We're sorry that it happened. Yeah, man. I read the opinion. I got to admit, like reading an 80-page dissent, you've got to be really invested in like the legal issue. And here it's like, I don't know. I think I'm good. I think I'm good. I think I'm all good on that. All good on that. Okay. I'm fighting a little bit here, gang. I'm fighting a little bit here. But that was, I thought, I bet I bet Pizco will read it. See how fucks shit. Such a troll. Such a troll. Love it. Love it, buddy. Oh, I think that's a useful that's a useful that's a very useful thing to have in my toolbox. I'll certainly be talking about that on Law and Order with Rob on Monday. I think that'd be a very good topic. So I'll be talking about that. All right, gang. I am going to try to rally because we also wanted to watch this geopolitics video. So I'm going to try to, I'm going to try to get myself revved up to the sticking point, making sure I got some energy left in the tank so that I can, make it through at least a little bit longer. At least a little bit longer. Wait, Rob got his account back? Rob got his. So, all right. If you guys don't know this saga, hold on. It's like, it's too funny. Let me see if I can. I got to find a good one. Let me see if I can zoom this in a way that's not going to like. I don't want to show you actual DMs with Rob. So let me. I need to set this up so that it's not like showing you real DMs, but. Let me find Rob's account, because if you guys haven't seen the saga of Rob Noor, this was just. Mwah. I wonder if he took down the posts or if he kept them up. I really hope he kept up the Coach Mim posts. I'll be really sad if he took down the Coach Mim posts. Oh, did he take him down? Oh, Coach Mim. Coach Mim, no. No. Oh, Rob. Oh, darn it. Okay. So Rob got hacked. And Rob got hacked, and he got hacked on X, and somebody took over and they started posting things like, I just bought this truck and I'm going to get a house. Thanks for getting me into crypto, Coach Mim. Whoever the fuck Coach, I assume Coach Mim's the hacker. And then, this Coach Mim character who's so good at crypto that gave Rob all this very good advice, then started sending stuff like this. This is my DMs with Rob. Hey, I need a quick favor. I'm in the running to co-host a major podcast event in Spotify and Google. It'd mean a lot if you could drop a vote for me. 100%. Appreciate you. Link, HTTPS, this shady ass goddamn site where if you click it, he's going to hack the fuck out of you. I respond to him, Coach Mim, with fuck off hacker. And he says, please vote for me. Like, you gotta love the commitment to the bit, right? Like, you'd think that after this there'd be no response, but no, it's like 4:33 he sends this, 2 minutes later I say fuck off hacker. He an hour later is like, yeah, you know what, I bet if I say please vote for me, he's gonna change his mind. This guy seems convincible. Anyway, so the new meme is, if you're hanging out in Rob's chat, you have to talk about Coach Mim. You got to say that Coach Mim sent you. You got to say that you're there. You're donating because of Coach Mim. This is important. This is very important. This is God's work. All right, so let's check out this video before I run out of fucking energy. So this was recommended about China's energy vulnerability. China's in deep trouble over Trump's Iran blockade. Zero Fucks and Jefferson think this is going to give me the solid intel I need. Let's find out if they're right. I have not watched this, so this is going to be a cold react.
You want to read the paper this video is based on, it's on my Substack at ryanpett.substack.com. The paper is by Adam Kraft and his team at the Corgi Group, or a Collections Operations Resource Group for Intelligence. You can find that at ryanpett.substack.com. Thanks, Adam, for getting me this paper and allowing me to do this video.
President Trump's blockade, not a quarantine, an active war type blockade of Iran, just put China on a countdown timer to destruction, like one of those Saw movies. And China.
Well, I'm already going to like this guy because this is exactly what I was saying. You got to see the chessboard. All right. You got me so far.
China basically has until June 8th to do something, because doing nothing is likely extremely economically painful. Let's talk about one of China's biggest strategic vulnerabilities. It's not demographics, not real estate, it's not even youth unemployment. It's oil. It's oil from Iran. More specifically, the fact that China built this world-class industrial economy that keeps depending on a narrow strip of water in the Middle East. According to a document by my former boss, Adam Kraft, roughly 5 million barrels a day of China's crude imports through the Strait of Hormuz, along with about 30% of its liquid natural gas imports. And that's not just a problem for China. That's one of those choke collars you put on a dog when they bark too loud. If you want to read the whole report, it's at ryanpett.substack.com for paid members. A couple of things to start.
Lucky, the judge answered these questions. Hey, Chapinko, what's going on? Hey, reexamination, what's going on? The judge answered that question. The judge said that Judge Boasberg had all the information he needed to make a criminal referral. Right? So if he wanted to refer the government for prosecution, he had the information. So I'm not sure what you're asking. Like the court said what he should have done. He should have just referred them for a criminal referral. He had all the information he needed. The question is, why is he holding an inquest? Because courts can't do that.
When people talk about great power competition, they tend to talk about
Chapingo, man, thanks for splashing the pot. I've been gone too long. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you. Good to see you. Thanks so much.
Cares, hypersonic stealth jets, and maybe some guy on Twitter who doesn't really know what they're talking about.
They're delicious, but they make you want to pee.
But this war and grand strategy is still about boring stuff. Fuel, refining, shipping, storage, and whether you keep the economy running and the lights on when you start posturing. And by the way, yes, you can get my Sea of America shirt from Bunker Branding, because I can tell you, with this blockade, if it wasn't the if the Arabian Sea wasn't the Sea of America before, it is now. This is what our Navy does. And this report's argument is really, really simple. If Hormuz stays disrupted long enough, China starts having to make some choices it really doesn't want to make. Choices between civilian growth and military readiness, choices between keeping the factories open and preserving fuel for a Taiwan contingency, choices looking between being weak and doing something really stupid. And that's the real story here. It's a story that really no one's talking about. China imports a huge amount of.
When was the last time? If the volume's low, I can turn it up. That we talked about America outmaneuvering China. I haven't heard that in a long time. A long time since I've heard that.
Oil specifically from that region. And the report says that in 2025, crude imports hit about 11.55 million barrels per day. That's 40 to 50% of those imports were from Hormuz. The Middle East makes up more than half of China's supply mix. There's a Russian overland pipeline that covers part of the problem, but Russia helps, but Russia doesn't solve this. And this is kind of where starts to become like a huge problem. Think of it like this. China's like this bodybuilder, right? They spent years getting huge and terrifying, right? But half of their calories still come from chicken. So you don't need to punch this guy in the face. You just need to cut off their supply of chicken. Now, it's obvious China's answer is like, well, we have reserves. And they do. This document estimates that China's strategic and commercial petroleum reserves total roughly 1.1 to 1.3 billion barrels, which sounds enormous because it is. This gives Beijing like a 100-day supply buffer under normal conditions, at least on paper. The important part is not the total. The important part is the clock. The report says,
what's the burn rate? So they got 100 billion, but what's their burn rate?
Is that the disruption clock began on February 28th, and by the assessment date, 43 days have already elapsed. That leaves an estimated 57 days before the crunch becomes more serious. So that's June 8th, 2026. China has until June 8th of this year before their lack of oil.
Approximately, right? Like obviously, like it's not like a legal deadline. They're approximating a burn rate, and China could take steps to ameliorate that by rationing. So I wouldn't fixate on the date, but approximately.
Starts to become a problem. A reserve is not immunity. A reserve is a time buffer. And that's all it is. It's a giant gas can in the garage. It's very useful, but if your daily commute is 90 miles and the gas station is closed, that can isn't a permanent solution. It prevents the pain from becoming unbearable immediately. Now, the report kind of breaks this into phases. During a short disruption, China kind of muddles through higher prices, some industrial slowdown, but manageable. In a medium disruption, 60 to 90 days, you start seeing real industrial strain, power grid stress, competition between civilian consumption and military needs. Once you get past 90 days, this report argues that you begin approaching real economic triage, right? Industrial contraction, social stability risk, hard political choices for Xi Jinping. Beyond 120 days, the document describes structural economic collapse, financial degradation, and military readiness. I want to pause there because that part matters. This is not just an economic story. This is a Taiwan story. Because the same reserve barrels China would want for a major military contingency are the barrels it might have to burn to keep its domestic economy kind of wheezing on by, right? Like a Dodge Neon going uphill in 1998. The report makes it very clear that China's strategic petroleum reserve it's tied to the contingency planning, but a prolonged Hormuz disruption forces those reserves to be used for domestic stability instead. Every barrel that's burned to support a factory running is one fewer barrel that's available for the People's Liberation Army. And this gets even worse when you look at refinery. People think of like oil and it's just get more oil, and that's not enough. Crude oil in the ground or in storage is not the same thing as JP on a truck, diesel in a tank battalion, or naval fuel. I think they call it bunker fuel on a replenishment ship. The document argues that China's military fuel architecture depends heavily on coastal refineries, maritime imports as well. So a blockade or sustained disruption doesn't reduce the total energy input. It hits the system that turns the crude into usable military fuel. And that is a much nastier problem than just like a price spike. It means that the PLA's fuel problem isn't just do we have enough, it's can we process it, move it, prioritize it, sustain operations over time. The report also gives a wartime PLA fuel window at about 60 to 100 days using redirected civilian supply and reserves. And it notes that China can requisition civilian fuel under its mobilization laws. I mean, it makes sense, right? Probably any country can do that. But that creates another problem. Every single gallon redirected to the military increases that civilian pain. So the same military-civil fusion system that looks efficient in peacetime becomes a real political liability during a prolonged disruption. And that's the kind of thing authoritarian systems hate. Because on paper, The authoritarian state looks very decisive, right? The great leader says something, the whole country acts. But in reality, authoritarian states are often very brittle. They can absorb hardship right up until the moment they suddenly can't. Now, let's talk sectors here, because this report also points out that damage would not be evenly distributed. Manufacturing gets hit hard. Petrochemicals, textiles, plastics, synthetic fibers, all of these rely on oil-linked inputs.
He says something really interesting there that I want to highlight. Authoritarian regimes appear very powerful when you're focusing on where they're focusing their attention. An authoritarian regime can do one or two things really, really well because the government focuses all its energy on it, and they always get that done. Like, for example, like people talk about Cuba having a healthcare system. I don't know even whether that's true, but if it was, that wouldn't surprise me, because a authoritarian regime can actually do one or two things well. What they don't do well is distribute their economic focus and their economic forces. So, there's a fragility that comes from that, where a disruption that might not be something that they are able to absorb, whereas a free market can be disrupted, but then innovates in a distributed way, which is different. World Radio, thanks for the 5. Appreciate you, buddy. Good to see you. This guy has always been interesting to listen to for his POV and his context explanations. I remember when he had to apologize to Sean Ryan for misinfo. I have not listened to this dude before. So far this has been like base as fuck. Really great takes.
Liquid natural gas stress affects power generation. Funny enough, EV batteries.
Dude, yeah, North. I was apologizing. I have not streamed. I did the one conversation, one interview, but like other than that, I haven't streamed in like 10 days because I've had so much legal work. I've been working around the clock recently, really busy with casework. So it's been a crazy time period for me, but I'm trying to make it up with a surprise stream tonight. And I'm trying to get back in the game.
Supply chains get squeezed because petroleum coke and other petroleum derived stuff, those products tighten, right? And now you can't make the plastic to hold your EV batteries. You don't think of stuff like that, right? EV, it's so natural. Fertilizer and agriculture start feeling the pressure because Gulf supply matters there as well. Financial markets start pricing in risk.
Sick. How'd you get that interview, North? That's cool that you got to talk to Rand Paul. How'd you pull that off? Very cool.
As energy security worsens. So when people say, oh, China can absorb it. Yeah, they can to a point. Absorb is doing a lot of the work here. What they really mean is that China can start spreading the pain around, which isn't the same as actually solving the freaking problem. Now, the document also outlines 4 broad Chinese responses. Option 1 is put pressure on Iran and quietly push for a reopening. This helps economically, but it makes Beijing look weak and throws Iran under the bus. Honestly, Iran should be under the bus. I mean, if you think about it.
See, remember when I said you got to see the chessboard? I put this on X, where like the second I read about Trump doing a counter blockade, I was like, this is a test of whether you can see the chessboard. Because if you can see the chessboard, and he's read papers on this, so he has more knowledge than I do. But I'm just saying, like, what is the geopolitical strategy? This is a power play between the U.S. and China, our ultimate adversary, being played out through China's proxy, Iran. So, blocking off the strait puts pressure on China to force Iran to negotiate in good faith. This is critical because Iran is run by religious lunatics who will never negotiate in good faith with the United States. They just won't. Like, this is an enemy nation that is not inclined to be reasonable. They've been doing the madman thing for longer than any of us, right? Like, they've invented the madman diplomacy. So, but by putting pressure on China could force, in theory, Iran to negotiate because China has tremendous leverage over them. So this is, oh, Sean, you can't stand Ryan? Well, look, man, I thought, he's I'm digging his take on. I haven't watched him before. I'm digging his take on this because he came to the exact same conclusion I did when I read about the counter blockade. And I always like people who agree with me. Come on, that's always fun.
If the Iranian regime falls, China probably doesn't really care whether the Iranian regime stays in power or falls, because they can theoretically get their oil no matter who is in charge. Could be a problem in wartime if Iran takes America's side if China invades Taiwan, right? But odds are, during any sort of Taiwan contingency, the U.S. is going to put destroyers in the Strait of Malacca and cut off China's oil supply anyway. So
that's an interesting vulnerability. So I guess one of the questions we've been talking about is like, what happens if if China invades Taiwan? And one of the things that the U.S. could do is what's happening with Iran now, is that we could use our Navy to block their oil supply. And yeah, Word Radio, he said that like they have like a pretty substantial reserve. It's like 100 billion barrels of oil, but they have a really high burn rate. So that's basically 100 days. And that it's going to disrupt either their military or the quality of life or their economy. And that this has been happening since late February. So basically, if we keep this blockade up, we're pretty close to having a lot of leverage over China's economy.
Oil supply anyway. So that could happen anyway. I think this is the most likely course of action, that China will start to.
Yeah, this is what I mean. I'm seeing I play chess, so I talk about the chessboard. I'm seeing a pawn structure, right? I'm seeing moves being made with Venezuela, with Iran. You bring up this relationship with Indonesia. This is setting up the U.S. to have enormous leverage militarily over China's energy supply, which gives us leverage geopolitically.
Pressure Iran to just agree to whatever America demands. Option 2 is naval escorts for Chinese shipping. That sounds like really macho and sovereign. All the idiots on Twitter are going to talk about this, but it creates a danger.
China's not going to want to do that. Like, imagine the U.S. has a blockade and then China's sending ships through the blockade to counter our blockade. That's very close to direct conflict with the U.S. That takes their relationship from quietly adversarial to openly adversarial. I don't think they want to do that. I don't think they want to do that.
Just proximity to the U.S. Navy and raises escalation risk. China does not want to run an American blockade. They have no problem.
Yeah. Okay. This guy and I we see the chessboard similarly. We keep agreeing with each other.
Bullying a Filipino fishing boat with fire hoses. They do not want to mess with American destroyers on the high seas, because we will defend ourselves and we know how to do it. Option 3 here is to retaliate economically, like cut off the U.S. supply of rare earths, critical minerals, that kind of thing. They did that before last year when President Trump added tariffs to China. That imposes costs on the U.S., but it doesn't reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Option 4 is some sort of strategic patience, like draw down reserves of oil and just try to increase Russian overland imports. I don't know how you do that. Somehow wait for diplomacy. But do nothing is the worst option. And it's a lot harder to bring Russian oil over land than it is to move it by sea. I mean, you can't just snap in a pipeline, right? Pipelines take time to engineer and build. The report assesses that this last option is most likely a near-term Chinese posture, which makes sense. It's the least risky militarily, but it's also the option where the meter keeps running, and that's the trap. Strategic patience sounds great until day 61, then starts sounding expensive by day.
Well, he's leaving something out, and this is the thing that's going to be really important. It's not just strategic patience, right? Strategic patience implies that you're being patient and not doing anything. But Iran demonstrated that the way to defeat the US is through propaganda, right? The move for China is not just strategic patience. It's to be strategically patient, to wait, to try to run out the clock, to try to get the oil back online without having to take a military or diplomatic stance that's going to be disadvantageous for them, and to flood the American zone with propaganda about how evil the blockade is and what a vicious war criminal Trump is, to weaken the American will and to make it less likely that the blockade will last long term. Because the thing about the blockade is the longer it lasts, the more leverage the US has. But let's be honest, Trump is under tremendous political pressure to cave right now. Like, he's under tremendous pressure because the left wants him to cave and a lot of the right wants him to cave. So, I personally do not want him to cave. I'd like to see him really use this blockade and push it. And I'm hopeful that, the useful idiots will get the fuck out of the way and realize that they're doing propaganda for Iran and China when they are making these arguments, and that in fact, even if you don't like the war, we're committed now. We should win. You can't, if you're in the war, they'll like us when we win. They'll like us when we win. You have to actually win. They're not going to like you for chickening out. They're not going to change their policy for you being a pussy. You have to win. This is a way to win the war without having boots on the ground. So this is the way. We said we didn't want mass boots on the ground. Great. Then we said that we wanted to win in a clean way. This is a win. This is a clean win. So we should take it. Hey, JB from Texas. Thank you for the membership. Praying the gray away in chat. If your name turned green today, it's Trapingro or JB. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Enjoy the emotes. Appreciate your support.
In 91, it's a race between diplomacy and depletion because things are starting to get dangerous. If you want a bigger strategic takeaway, it's basically this. China looks super scary when you look at all their ships and missiles and aircraft and rocket force brigades, all that stuff. But this document is a reminder that industrial warfare is downstream of logistics, and logistics is downstream of energy. If a rival can impose severe stress on your fuel systems without invading you, then your strategic freedom of action is a lot smaller than it looks on parade day. This report's bottom line is that energy dependence has become a direct instrument of leverage against the People's Republic of China. And this matters far beyond Iran.
And we have a fuck ton of oil, which means that we are less vulnerable to this sort of tactic.
Because Beijing is always studying the U.S. They're always doing it. And one lesson here is that maritime dominance isn't just about sinking ships. It's not about hypersonic missiles. It's about controlling the economic oxygen. And you don't have to destroy China to hurt China. You just have to make China burn their reserve barrels of oil faster than they can replace them. And if that sounds familiar, it's because this is what great power competition looks like. What happens when you take out all the tweets of people that don't know what they're talking about and you shut down the PowerPoint. Because this isn't magic or memes or Twitter experts really, bro, they'll just reroute it. LOL, America's done. Because someday someone says like, oh, why don't you just, that's a great way of showing you have no idea what you're talking about. China's energy timeline is not just about military readiness. It's about energy confidence. And Beijing has some serious vulnerabilities in maritime energy dependence, which no amount of Twitter chest thumping can completely erase. And if this disruption continues, China will eventually have to choose between escalation, humiliation, or economic pain. And finally, this thing should let you know that logistics isn't a side quest. Logistics isn't a freaking mini game. Logistics is the only game. The U.S. Army is a logistical organization that just dabbles in combat. And if you can't logistics, you can't project power. At the end of the day, this report is really describing a strategic hourglass. China has sand on the top, but that sand is moving down. And once enough of it falls through, a country that looks really powerful on paper starts finding out how much that power was rented. Read the report at ryanpet.substack.com for paid members. Grab my Sea of America shirt at bunkerbranding.com. Thank you guys for watching. Start the clock.
I will subscribe. That seems like a channel that's worth watching. Very cool. So yeah, I super appreciate that. Oh, I'm still in white mode now over there. Gross. Twitter reverted me to light mode recently. Um, so that was watch the commercial. Oh man, was there a good commercial? Am I being a bad streamer because I cut it off once I had already heard the part I wanted to hear? That was, I thought, pretty useful. I was pleased to learn that. That seemed like a good thing. And look, that can't be surprising to anybody who's been listening to me yammer about geopolitics. Like, I think that he sees it the same way I see it, which is that like geopolitics is about contest between great powers, and the U.S. has been really reluctant to use its advantages. And somebody said this in chat. Let me find it. It's actually kind of heroic of Trump to do this because he's potentially going to take a massive political loss. Yeah, he's risking his legacy and he's risking the midterms. He's taking a huge political gamble, which is something that second-term presidents do, and he's doing it in service of changing the geopolitical dynamics, right? And there is a real problem that's happened where we established American hegemony, we established international law, which was basically supposed to help Europe and America. And then over time, the game got turned on its head. China asserted itself, Russia started asserting itself. The geopolitical order has been destabilized. America's not getting the benefits out of it. Europe is not being as, you know, they're not quite following our lead this way that they're supposed to, because we're paying for everything. So they're supposed to be, following our lead. And we need to establish a new international equilibrium that a new American equilibrium which will benefit the US long term. And that's how I see the foreign policy that Trump's been pursuing. It's, the tariffs, which not my favorite method, but he is attempting to destabilize and reestablish an economic system so that we could get out of the kind of status quo that long term was going to be a problem for the US, even if in the short term it wasn't. The striking of Venezuela, the striking of Iran, this is a strategic set of moves. And it's not like there weren't problems with drugs, there weren't problems with nukes. There are you can have more than one motivation. But in terms of like grand geopolitical strategy, this is a move to destabilize China, who is our primary adversary. Basically, what I'm telling you is we are in a Cold War right now. We are in a Cold War with China. That's where we are. And all these moves are the moves that you make in that sort of cold conflict, because we're not going to fight China, but we are going to posture back and forth. And then you got to think, what are America's advantages and what are China's advantages in this cold conflict? One of America's advantages is we have a much, much better Navy. We have a much, much better Air Force. We have a much, much more battle-tested, tried and true logistics system to support our troops. So we can project power and do something like this blockade that in a way that other countries just can't. We're uniquely capable of doing these sorts of things. And if you just blockaded the strait, that would be a direct provocation of China. And in a Cold War, you don't do direct provocations. Direct provocations like that, that's not good, because in Cold War, it's always indirect provocations. But we didn't blockade the strait first. Iran did. So we are counter-moving Iran. Now, does it hurt China? Of course. Is that ultimately the point? Yeah, probably. But that's fair game because it's being done through the proxy. And that's kind of the rule of a cold conflict, is that you do the conflict through the proxy always, not directly. So that's where we are. And I think if anyone tells you differently, they either are selling something, they've bought into the propaganda that Iran and China are going to be spewing, or they just don't want us to win, which is sadly a lot of people just don't want us to win. But that's what the chessboard is. That's what this is about. Turkey being the enemy, Cacophons, I would need to see that. I don't think that's very likely. That strikes me as tremendously unlikely. I mean, I could be proven wrong, but my impulse is that's tremendously unlikely for a lot of reasons. One, Turkey's European ally. Two, we've had pretty good relations now. Orban's leaving, so Trump had better relations with Orban, but the next government doesn't seem like it's like radically left or something. So I would be incredibly surprised by that. Anything's possible, but I would be stunned. Yeah, Turkey's a NATO member. Now, basically, in any situation where we're like in conflict with Turkey, that means that like the entire European alliance has basically fallen through. That we've had some major falling out with Europe. It would be really shocking, really shocking. All right, gang, I was hoping to make it to midnight, but I'm just not going to be able to. I'm sorry. I'm starting to just like babble at this point. I'm going to pass the fuck out because I had a crazy week. But before I pass the fuck out, a few things. I am going to try. I'm not going to promise, but I'm going to try to do like a chill stream hangout session tomorrow during the day because I miss you guys. I've been a bad streamer, so I'm going to try to hang out tomorrow during the day if I can. Normally after like a big court, I had a big court filing today. I get a little grace period where I don't have to be like so crazy the next day. So hopefully I get some grace tomorrow. Not guaranteed, but I hope I get some grace tomorrow. If so, I'll hang out with you. If not, you know why not. I'm back to the grind. On Friday, it's part 3 of my conversation with Counter Connor. So if there's anything you want me to ask him, remember where we got last time. I accused him of being a progressive. He said he wasn't because progressives are communists. I corrected him and pointed out that no, progressives are people that believe in advancing beyond the guarantees in the Declaration of Independence, advancing beyond natural law, and that the government should be in charge of this advancement and should be guiding us towards this better tomorrow rather than getting out of the people's way, right? And we recentered the definition. He said, from that perspective, he could see why I might be more supportive of Trump than him. And that's where we're going to pick it off. So the question is, what are we actually going to get to the point where Connor is able to see why I have a different perspective on the administration than he does? So I'll check that. Oh, did Connor debate the left on Israel? Jesus, I'm so sick of Israel conversations, but maybe I'll check that out. Accuse him of transitioning into a woman. I like the Berkler Japan girl. I thought it was really cool. I responded, but I didn't ping you. Oh shit, I didn't ping you. Oh, I'm sorry, Japan girl. Hold on. Oh no, I did the fucking thing. I did the bad thing. Sorry, Chipengro. The thrust of my response, which I'll say now because I forgot to ping you after I responded, is what if incrementalism doesn't work, right? Like, okay, let's say I agree with you that Burke, the hypo is Burke comes in today and he sees that we're in this progressive hellscape of a government, right? And that was Chapengro's question. And he theorized that Burke would say we should slowly reform it back into a more ideal shape. And I don't disagree with you. I think that's what Burke would say. But the question I have is what happens if that doesn't seem to be working? What if you get to the point where incrementalism isn't really on the table? Because like one of the ways you could look at Trump, one, is that he just didn't know how to pull the levers, but also he was trying to reform the system without being overtly antagonistic to elements of it. and the system defends itself very well. So the problem is we have the system that's hyper good at defending itself. So if you want to demolish it, you want to change it, you want to incrementally reform it, but you have a long way to go. Can you actually do that without bringing out the sledgehammer at some point? Open question. I don't know. The way that I made peace with like Rob and like the populist wing of the party is that I think that sometimes you need a sledgehammer. I think sometimes you need to do some demo because I'm not sure incrementalism is always possible. I'm just not sure. Potentially criminal Sean, my buddy, $2. Thank you, man. Dude, by the way, Sean, have you checked out the Boasberg thing yet? That shit is wild. That opinion was crazy. I hope you're checking it out. Insane. I mean, that's like to get mandamus twice in the same case is just, I've never heard of anything like that. Insane. Hope you check that out. And by the way, Sean, we got to stream sometime. Let's figure out a topic where you and I can collab. We got to chill. It's been too long. Also, I don't know, Sean, if you saw, but they did AI art of you as a train conductor. Hold on, in honor of Sean, let me in honor of our buddy Sean. Hold on. Hey, Sean, can you guess which video you were in? Sean, you get 3 guesses. Which video features you? This shit made me laugh so hard. This shit made me laugh so hard when they putting this up. I thought this was so funny. With the conductor outfit and Clyde. Yes, you're right. It's this one. This is the one Sean was in. This is a decoy. I was just tricking you guys. The one in the middle, this is the decoy. It's actually this one. And this one where I just look like an oaf. Oh, that made me so happy. That made me so happy. I think that was really funny. And then Sean with another 5. Ask Connor if doing all this was worth trying to be friends with Destiny and Pisco. Is he in on this new Democratic fundraising thing? Was Connor part of like the WIC ground game stuff? Is that why he shaved his beard? Is Connor fundraising for this new Democratic fundraising initiative? Do you guys know? Is that why he shaved? Because if that's why, it's like Rube with the 5 on the way out the door. Hammers are the only ones who made progress for freedom in the past 40 years. We should chat this month if you're free. Dude, for sure. It's been too long. I'd love to chat. As I said, my schedule's like fucked up right now, but let me try to bury myself out. And we'll totally set it up, Rube. And if we don't, I definitely need to start doing like some chill streams and some panel streams and call-in streams. I've been really remiss in kind of like the bread and butter of the channel. So I will absolutely make sure to find time. So I'm trying. I have been really busy, and I will be really busy with my day job. But these things pass, man. These things pass. So we'll find a way. We'll find a way for sure. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you. Okay. All right. All right, gang. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to get the sleep of the just, and then wake up and do it all over again. Hopefully, chill stream tomorrow because I'm planning on doing that. Connor on Friday, that's going to be in the morning. If I can do the stream tomorrow, it will be earlier. It'll be earlier it'll probably be an AM stream because I'm more likely to get away with it in the AM. So hopefully I'll do an AM stream tomorrow and just hang out a little bit. Connor on Friday, and then PF Young wanted to chat. And I think that would be really interesting. I have not scheduled it yet, but if you guys have ideas about how to approach that conversation, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to pitch PF Young on American liberalism, classic liberalism, natural law being like the based as fuck, dark centrist meta vibe, right? like it's the because he's all about vibes, he's all about the memes. He's not really about like he approaches things a little differently than I do. But I think what I want to tell him is that like we had this incredibly based, unimaginably perfect philosophy. And what's happened is that these bullshit progressives just chipped away at it. And now they wear our ideology like a skin suit. And what's fucked up is we get blamed for their mistakes. Like they do some shit that's against classical liberal theory, that's against natural law. It fucks things up. And then we're somehow to blame for it. But, you know, he's a, Chipingo, option 2. I think that this is the thing because he's a Jordan Peterson supporter. So I think I've approached that conversation through the lens of we are the people who tell this story. Because that's a Jordan Peterson, that's a Petersonian approach. So I think if I give him the Jordan Peterson pitch on natural law, it'll fit into his zeitgeist of like dark centrism. And I think, I'm not sure I can onside him, but I think I can, I think I can make some progress there. So that'll be an interesting conversation. I'm going to set that up, but I'm going to pass the fuck out. I appreciate you guys. You know, I got to tell you before I drop, like, it's so nice to see that there's like 40 people here for a random stream where I didn't give you enough warning, wasn't scheduled. I just had time, so I did it. There's always this fear that when I go back into legal work and I can't stream regularly, that one day I'll log on and no one will be here and the experiment will be over. But it's really cool to see that you guys are here and hanging out. It's really cool to see that like a video that I put out has like 4K views. There was a time when getting like 100 views would have been insane, when I couldn't break 100, and now, you know, getting 4,000. So like, it's really vindicating to see the progress, and it's really amazing to see that you all are still here, even when I'm not around. I appreciate you. Like the stream, and I will endeavor to get back onto the regular schedule as soon as I can. And until then, golden handcuffs. Sorry about that, gang, but I'm doing the best I can. All right. Have a great night, and I will see you hopefully tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, Friday. Have a good one.